Doctor in the TARDIS. Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, ready to talk some classic Doctor Who once more with my partner in time, wonderful friend, and someone who's trying to stay alive in the state of Texas, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
Charles, I will continue to wear a mask no matter what my governor says. Yes, I am here.
I would be wearing a hazmat suit, personally.
Exactly. Yes, I am doing well. I'm excited to talk about this, and I need to give a shout-out to our audience. Pause this, go to the restroom, get something to eat, get something to drink, come back. Because when Charles, Xan, and I are together, we will break records on. There is so much to discuss about this episode. There is so much to catch up. This is going to be, at no extra charge, a bonus episode. Supersides, the 25-page giant like we used to do when we were kids, Charles.
You mean the 80-page giant? Yeah.
80-page giant, yes. That was a quarter, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, the 80-page giant. I am so excited about this episode.
All right. Well, hey, without any further ado then, or further ado, take your pick. Everybody, please welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere once again, my wonderful Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast co-host with the most, and fellow Drunk Cinema co-host, Xan Sprouse. How you doing, Xan?
I'm good, Charles. I like your little vocal flub there. I'm your ghost host.
Yes, your ghost host.
Yeah, we are co-ghost hosts.
Are you saying that just a little bit of a mind flip?
And the time slip.
And the time slip, yeah. As we talk a little bit, something a little resembling Rocky Horror, as here at episode 221, we are talking Ghost Light, you guys.
It's funny you say that, Charles, because I had to rewind that shot of the lightning when you see it outside the house, because I thought to myself, wait a minute, and I rewinded. I'm like, because I would not put it past
this lightning right here?
Yeah, I would not put it past J&T to recycle that to save it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To save a pound, excuse me.
Yeah, exactly, because J&T is slightly on the cheap, as we discussed here on the podcast. So yeah, Ghostlight. I mentioned this last time, that this is probably one of the oddest stories that Doctor Who has ever produced. So who better to discuss this episode, like I said, than Xan joining me here on this podcast with Jesse. So essentially we have Team Ghostwood. It's like Ghostwood here.
Well, I really want to say, I watched the episode and enjoyed it, but had so many questions. And I said, you should watch it again, Jesse. And then I said, no. Linda's out of town this weekend. I'm going to wait and take notes with you and Xan, and then this weekend watch it again, like with the annotated version, right? Like I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh, that's it. So yeah, this is an interesting one. I
kind of figured. So this is the first time you watched this story. Am I right, Jesse?
Is.
Okay, so
absolutely.
You already mentioned you have questions. So I have to gather that this one was a little difficult to follow.
Yes.
Just slightly.
Yes, it was.
Because a lot of people consider that. This one goes over a lot of people's heads. And it's definitely one that was open into interpretation. Because the writer, Mark Platt, actually wanted it that way. There's a quote that's attributed to him that he didn't want to just kind of serve things up on a plate for the viewer. So in certain plot details are kind of left out of the story, as we'll discuss.
And I may be stealing some of your trivia, and if it's so, I apologize. But
that's all right.
I was reading that Sylvester McCoy said this is his favorite serial, but he still doesn't understand it.
Right.
Which I think is brilliant.
And I'm sure, hopefully, Xan will agree with me. This is a very cool-looking Doctor Who serial, especially for late 80s, no-budget J&T era. This actually, it's got a little something going on with it.
Right. They really found something to do with, honestly, probably props they had hanging around. Stuffed birds, Victorian furniture, Victorian costumes. They really found a way to put that stuff together. And I don't know if that was an element of this, a necessity is the mother of invention kind of a thing, but it really worked. It's frenetic. It is all over the place. And I actually hadn't seen it in a long time, and I had to stop it and restart it thinking, did I pick the right chapter? Because we really just come in right in the middle of the two of them seemingly having a conversation, and almost like we're supposed to know what's going on. So you really have to watch and pay attention. Like where are we? How are we here? Why did we come here? And then of course we figure out that this is another aspect. And Charles, we've had this discussion before about Ace, that the Doctor is very interested in getting Ace to face her fears. Right. That's why they're there. They're there for Ace.
This is part of, and then we will discuss this in our first topic, I think. This is essentially part of the Doctor's, I don't want to say education of Ace, but at least is trying to help her with certain issues and prepare her for other things down the road, because he's obviously the long-term planner. He's the schemer this incarnation. So I think this is part of that, and obviously Ace, once she finds out about it, isn't exactly overjoyed by this.
Well, that's the thing. The Doctor knows that he's not going to be with Ace forever.
Yeah.
Right.
And that she needs to, there are many, many ways in which Ace needs to, I don't want to say grow up, but she needs to grow.
Yes.
And I think the Doctor really does. The Doctor cares for all of his companions, but he really does care for Ace, and he really wants her to be okay. Because as you can see in this episode, Ace has a lot of underlying fear and anger that is keeping her mired in her own negativity. Yeah. And he really wants to release her from that.
Yeah, and she's one of the younger companions. I do need to share, to make this even more uncomfortable, I pull it up on the Fire Stick, I open up on BrickBox, I start, and the subtitles don't match what's happening.
Oh, that's so wrong.
And I'm like what am I... Is there something just barely? So I ended up having to turn the subtitles off. Then on the second episode, they seemed to be working correctly. And then on the third episode, they didn't again. But for a while there, I was 10 or 15 minutes into the first episode going, this is not just because, sometimes I can't hear as well. And, and so I'm like, what? And this was, so I'm like, okay.
Too many Springsteen concerts, apparently.
Yes, exactly. Is this supposed to be happening? I'm so confused.
Yeah, maybe it was just even the subtitlist couldn't keep up with what's going on in this story. He said, "Screw it," and starts smashing the keyboard with his fists. I guess, I don't know. So, but before we get into this and start breaking it down, Xan, so you said that you just watched this recently after a long time. So, did it kind of hold up for you, or did you, now that some time has passed, did you find some more flaws with it?
I found some flaws with it, and that doesn't mean I didn't always find flaws with it.
Right.
I think it was the same flaws. I think I was reminded of flaws.
Okay, so nothing really new then?
No, nothing really new. The thing is, I picked this episode because I love Ace.
Yeah.
Ace is my favorite companion. I've said this every time I've been on this show.
Well, that's okay. You can keep saying it.
This is a good episode because we get Ace backstory. We get a lot of Ace backstory, more than we usually get, I think.
Right.
And that's why I picked it, and that's what I liked about it. I like the concept of the haunted house. I like the creepiness of it, but it has problems. It definitely does have its issues, but we don't love Doctor Who because it has fantastic production value.
No.
We love Doctor Who because of characters.
Right.
And this is a great episode of that. And I think watching this in retrospect, I believe I saw this in late high school or early college. And now that I've seen other things like The Unquiet Dead, where you can think to yourself, I can see way better ways they could have done this.
Yeah.
There's a sorrow that it's too bad they couldn't have had Russell T. Davis.
If only they had a better budget and a better showrunner, that kind of thing.
If they could have had, Russell T. Davis instead of J&T, we could have had
2005 special effects, that kind of thing.
That doesn't even bother me. You know, that the special effects aren't even that's part of the charm of original classic Who, or the bad special effects.
Right.
But when you know that you can do a very similar episode and have it be, you know, I'm sorry for the pun mildly intended, fantastic.
Fantastic.
You're like, oh, it's too bad we're not looking at these two episodes on the same level. They're in the same category, but we're not looking at them on the same level.
Because they're from different eras, it's hard to really compare them, because Ghostlight being an older story from an era, especially an era that was just so limited in its production ability, that it's not really a fair fight between the two.
It's not a fair fight, but they feel the same. It's Victorian. It's a house that seems like it's haunted, but it's not actually haunted by ghosts. There's a Gwen in it. So,
that was one of my considerations for reverse the polarity, by the way, but that's not the one I chose. So
yeah, I was going to pick Hyde. It was the one that had. I agree with you. I love when the Doctor visits Victorian England. I love how everything looks, and I love the eeriness of this episode. I mean,
it's very atmospheric, this episode.
You know, as we do, right? Let's everyone take a drink, a Springsteen reference. You know, at times I'll tell Linda, don't focus on Bruce's vocals, trying to understand them because he's garbling. Just think of this as an instrumental, and his voice is just another instrument. And this was almost, I didn't care about the plot. I was just enjoying the mood and the visuals and the emotions the show was telling. And I absolutely got the idea that he was doing this for Ace. And a lot of the other stuff, I went, well, that's just not really important. The important thing is he is trying to prepare her. But a great atmosphere of an episode.
Yeah. Obviously, you know, everybody's ready to talk about this episode, so I love this, that we're just ready to dive in. So I gotta breeze through this other stuff really quickly so we can get to it. All right. So overview, just really quickly, like I said, is written by Mark Platt, who is notable because he didn't write, because this was Doctor Who's last season. He didn't get a chance to write any more for Doctor Who.
But he wrote something very, very special.
But he did write something very, very special, and I'm holding it right here in my hands. I don't know if you can see that. This is called Lung Barrow.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there's some other things I want to talk about, but Lung Barrow is a very interesting, because this is one of the things I was going to cover in trivia, is that this was actually Lung Barrow, which I'm holding in my hands, which is actually pretty rare, apparently. Like, this is going for like $350 on eBay right now.
Wow,
so,
don't spill your tea on that, Charles.
No, pretty much. That's why I'm pushing it off way off to the side, because yeah, it was a nice, I was very fortunate enough to pick it up when it came out back in the day. And the story is about the Doctor's ancestral home and past on Gallifrey. And this was actually the original intended script instead of Ghostlight. But apparently, John Nathan Turner, being John Nathan Turner, said, no, it kind of reveals too much of the Doctor's origins. So why don't you scrap that, and why don't you focus on kind of like this old house? Keep that, but, you know, put it on Earth or something, and kind of make it a little, you know, make it about like something like evolution instead.
I may have just, for the first time ever, agreed with JNT.
You think so? You don't want it because you don't want the Doctor's mysteries revealed.
I like that there are so many things about the Doctor that we don't know.
Right.
That's, like I keep talking about with The Mandalorian, please do not give a species name to Grogu and Yoda.
Yeah.
I like that we don't know. Yeah. So I get where he's coming from with that. As much as I would have loved to have seen that, I completely get where he's coming from with that.
Well, one of the things that I liked about The Timeless Children that Chris Chibnall did recently, very controversial episode. But what I liked about it is that in the process of answering some questions about the Doctor, Chibnall introduced a bunch of new questions on top of it. So essentially it's like, okay, here's some answers that you've been wanting a long time, but I'm going to give you a bunch of more questions so that we can keep the mystery going.
That sounds like David Lynch.
A little bit, right? A little bit. Although I don't think nearly as talented as David Lynch, but...
Well, I also don't think nearly as many questions.
Right, exactly. But my point is that, you know, at some point you almost have to answer some questions, otherwise the audience is going to get frustrated. But, so you have to be very careful about how you do it, because you want to keep the show's mystery and keep people hooked. So you got to come up with other questions that are just as, you know, frustrating, I think. to keep it fresh, but also, to keep your audience hooked. But I recommend checking out Lung Barrow. It's very, if you get a chance, because
if you have $350.
Yeah, well, the good thing is that if you're able to track down the Internet Archive, you can actually download that for free as a as an EPUB file or a PDF if you want to check it out and read it. I recommend it. So he wrote that, and he also wrote one of the best Big Finish audios that has ever been done, Spare Parts, that was done in for the Fifth Doctor, which essentially was the origin of the Cybermen on Mondas.
Ooh, nice.
And this was the story that Russell T. Davies adapted by a writer named Tom McRae for David Tennant's era in the Rise of the Cybermen, The Age of Steel.
Oh, okay.
So if you remember that two-parter where they go to an alternate Earth and meet up with alternate Pete and whatnot, and Ricky instead of Mickey, that whole thing. But yeah, that was based on Spare Parts. He also wrote a Big Finish audio called Eldrad Must Die, which is a sequel to The Hand of Fear from the Tom Baker era, the last one with Sarah Jane Smith, and Planet of the Ronnie for the Sixth Doctor, and An Earthly Child, not an unearthly child, but an earthly child featuring the son of Susan, essentially the Doctor's great-grandson, for a Paul McGann story. So very cool, and that one also had Carol Ann Ford reprising Susan, so check that one out if you want.
Really?
Very, very recommended. Yeah, there's a lot of cool Big Finish audios like that. Yeah, it's.
Maybe I should get over my Paul McGann thing.
I recommend it. I could hook you up just the way you hooked up Jesse with some Bruce Springsteen covers if you're interested.
Okay.
If you want to open that Pandora's box, I'm right here. I could do that for you.
All right.
I could hook you up. This is directed by Alan Waring, the second serial of season 26 in 1989, starring, of course, Sylvester McCoy as the Seventh Doctor, Sophie Aldred as the great Dorothy Ace McShane.
Alan Waring, of course, directed also Greatest Show in the Galaxy. So.
Yes, one of your other favorites.
Got a shout out to that, one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Very good point. So guest cast this time we have Ian Hogg with 2 G's as Josiah Samuel Smith. He played a character named Vashkar in a Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio called The Sandman. No relation to anything DC Comics. He also played the characters Albert Marsden, General Petrov, and Sergeant Schumacher. In a Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, Big Finish audio Protect and Survive, that also had Ace in it. Sylvia Sims plays Mrs. Pritchard. She, if you've ever seen the movie The Queen with Helen Mirren, she plays the Queen Mother in that movie. And she was also recently in the series Gentleman Jack, if you're at all familiar with that show, because Peter Davison's in that one. So
yeah, that's right.
And my wife, Lori, loves that series, loves it to death. So you might want to check it out if you haven't. Recommended. Carl Forione, and I hope I pronounced that well enough for certain DJ Nick. Plays hopefully he'll let me know. Plays Nimrod, our Neanderthal butler. He was in a previous story called Planet of the Spiders, which was John Pertwee's final story. He played a character named Land in that one. Sharon Duche, I guess, played Control. And she was actually in a Sean Connery movie called Outland. Can't talk tonight. And John Hallam played Light in this one. Zan may recognize him as playing Luro in Flash Gordon, who was Voltan's one of his top guys. He was the guy that was always in the shots of the Hawkmen with
it doesn't end well for him.
No, it doesn't, but he's in it.
No,
so you can go
there.
oh hey, that's Light from Doctor Who when you watch it.
Yeah, yes you can.
He's also in the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. The Wicker Man, the original Wicker Man from 1973.
God, I love that movie.
That's a great movie, right? Christopher Lee is just fantastic in that movie. And he also played Sir Wilfrid Death on the first run of Blackadder back in the day.
Oh my God. Boy, has it been a long time since I've seen that.
Yeah, highly recommended. If you haven't seen Rowan Atkinson's Blackadder, much better than Mr. Bean in my opinion.
I think that's a scientifically proven fact.
I would say so, yes. It is known, yes, as they like to say in Game of Thrones. Michael Cochran plays Redverse Fenn Cooper, And we had previously seen him in Peter Davison's story, Black Orchid, where he played Charles Cranley in that one. He also voiced a character Murgot in Colin Baker, Big Finish Audio, Brotherhood of the Daleks. And he played Lieutenant Colonel Brooke in a Sylvester McCoy, Big Finish Audio, No Man's Land. And he was also in the 1997 version of The Saint that starred Val Kilmer. He was in The Crown recently, and he played Reverend Travis on Downton Abbey. So, guy's got some credits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Frank Windsor plays Inspector Mackenzie, and he was in a Peter Davison story, The King's Demons, as Ranulph Fitzwilliam. Catherine Schlesinger plays Gwendolyn, and lastly, we have John Nettleton playing Reverend Ernest Matthews. So that's our cast this time.
Catherine Schlesinger, by the way, niece of John Schlesinger, the director of, oh my God, why can't I think of it? It was just in my head. Midnight Cowboy. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can see the two of them crossing the street, and I could not think of the name of the movie.
That's okay. I do that on a very regular basis, as Jesse could probably attest.
It's just
Me
left.
too, absolutely.
It just
yes.
exited.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that kind of stuff just runs right out of my brain, and I'm fumbling in the dark as a result.
Yes, he won an Oscar for directing Midnight Cowboy.
All right, so I talked about the Lung Barrow script. So Ghostlight turned out to be the final production of Series 26, the last season in the original run of Doctor Who, with the last recorded sequence being the final scene between Mrs. Pritchard and Gwendolyn, where before Nimrod's eyes, horrified eyes, light turns them to stone so they'll never change again. So that was the very final shot of classic Doctor Who.
Really? Wow.
Even though this isn't the last story, because, in the production order, or, when it was broadcast, two stories, The Curse of Fenric and Survival, aired after this one. So even though it was the last made, it wasn't the last transmitted. So the Doctor calls Ace Eliza, which of course is a reference to fictional character Eliza Doolittle from Pygmalion.
Mm-hmm.
And while trying to get her to behave with more Victorian attitudes. And this is echoed with Ace trying to help fulfill her desire to be a proper lady, including elocution lessons, which I could probably use right now. So, even though they take like all of 20 seconds.
I love her version of The Rain in Spain.
Yeah.
It's a little different. I think it's funny.
Falls mainly down the drain. Yes.
Right, mainly down the drain, yeah.
Yeah, so of course Ace has to put her own spin on it, right?
Yep.
So John Nathan Turner, because hey, we can't talk enough about John Nathan Turner, right? Became concerned about the lack of a traditional Doctor Who monster with this story. So in response, Mark Platt came up with the husks in the basement, which represented Josiah's earlier evolutionary forms. And originally he had the idea, he envisioned them as an army of creatures before the numbers got cut down to 3 and then got cut down again to just 2 guys, because they originally were planning another husk that looked like a fish type person. And it was hoped that the faces would kind of incorporate echoes of Josiah's features, but for whatever reason, they didn't go that route, which kind of makes things way more confusing because they don't look a damn thing like Josiah at all.
And they're just probably what was laying around.
That's what I'm thinking.
So there was a lot of stuff
probably didn't
from
want to spend the
classic
money.
Doctor Who that you don't want to spend the money. Yeah, there were a lot of masks and costumes and things from classic Doctor Who. I mean, before this, obviously, that were used in the Star Wars Cantina. I mean, these heads and costumes got recycled a lot, and he probably just like I said before, when we furnished this house, they probably went through their vault of props and said, okay, that stuffed bird, that glass of preserved butterflies, those dresses, those bug heads, let's get them all and put them all in this episode.
Exactly. All right, topic number 1, if everybody's ready, let's talk the 7th Doctor and Ace. Because as Xan mentioned, this is the Doctor's attempt to try to get Ace to confront some of her fears that she's not particularly eager to confront. So, we talked a little bit about what Xan thought of this, although I will get to you and let you we discuss this further. But so I want to get Jesse's thoughts on this one, since he's been particularly quiet. I want to let him think that he's forgotten over here.
Thank you, Charles. No, I did tell. I think it was an interesting twist. I had talked about that when we saw Ace's origin story. It bothered me a little bit that she's underage traveling with the doctor,
Okay.
So putting that aside, though, you could see he is truly, she calls him professor, but he is a father figure to her. And he, I think, sees, and I'm going to read into it, he sees Susan, he sees other family members, and he is trying to get her ready to go, right? As a father, as a parent, a lot of what your job is to get your child ready to be on their own. I thought it was interesting. She talked about going to a haunted house before, and he's like, oh, really? Oh. And then, and I'm going, wait, but this is Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Isn't there an odd that this is that house in a timey-wimey way? I absolutely understand why you love Ace, and the first time I saw him, like, I don't get this person with the jacket and the bombs, and this is kind of different.
Ace is cool,
but Ace is cool. She is a very dynamic and energetic character. I love how she interacts. I love the whole subplot of them being shocked by her clothes. And like, don't you have, and
she's naked.
Yeah. And the doctor's like, oh, please forgive her. And then, Ace doesn't go grab a dress. She gets, a suit.
A tuxedo.
Yeah. The tuxedo, which she looks awesome.
She rocked that tuxedo. Thank you very much.
She does. So it's just, like I said, there's a lot of the other categories that I'm not going to have a lot to say on, but maybe some questions. But this storyline made the episode for me. I loved watching them and him trying to almost metaphorically get her off training wheels and so she can ride her bicycle by herself.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So, Xan, how about you? What are your thoughts? Obviously, I know you're a big Ace fan, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you make of the doctor trying to get Ace, to confront these issues that she's not ready to confront on her own?
I think that's an interesting thing about Sylvester McCoy's doctor, mm-hmm. is that he's a little more interested in the psyches of his companions than I think other doctors had been up to this point. And we've talked before about Ace facing her fears. Greatest show in the galaxy is all about her facing her fears.
Right.
And
that fear of clowns, the coulrophobia.
Yeah. Right, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to be afraid of. So I like
unless it's Harley Quinn. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Harley Quinn, that's not a clown. So I like how when they get into the house and she's got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah.
And she says, I don't like haunted houses. I told you that. Did you tell me that? Huh.
Yeah.
The doctor's not that flighty. We know that there's something going on here. And he says, how many haunted houses have you been in? And she says, one was enough. Thank you. And that's where that's the point in this episode where you sit up and go, oh, what's going on here? What are we doing? And when we realize that he's brought her to understand the origin of why the house bothered her. Mm-hmm. And we understand that he had to bring her back to Victorian England or sometime before her time because, spoiler alert, she burned this house down.
Right. And got in trouble, as we found out from other stories. Yeah.
Right, from burning this house down. This is part of why she's seen as a troubled no-goodnik was this issue. So
another reason why I like her, but yeah.
Right. So we have to go back in time to see this house, first of all. And when he's explaining to her, when you were 13, you didn't realize that this wasn't a haunting. This was an alien problem. this was an alien infestation, and that's why it bothered you, but you didn't have the reference to realize that when you were still just 13.
Yeah.
So I feel like the doctor is a lot like, we've talked about this before, where the doctor is a lot like Batman, where one misstep and he's the Joker.
Yes.
And I feel like the doctor, one misstep and he's the master.
Or the Valeyard. Yeah.
Right. And so this concept of forcing Ace into these situations is a little on the devious side.
Well, that's one of the traits of this doctor. That he is this devious, he's manipulative, he's like I said, he's a schemer, he's got plans. And
that's one of the best
this is
lines.
one of those, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the best lines in this, is that not even I play this many games at once.
Right. It's very telling, isn't it?
It's very telling about his character. And as much as I kind of resent him a little for taking it upon himself to decide what's right for Ace and what she can and cannot handle.
Yeah.
I do agree with the fact that Ace does have two major issues that are going to hold her back in her life. And those are her fears and her anger. And this was a perfect storm of her not only facing her fears, but facing her anger and facing her conscience, facing her guilt. That scene where she breaks down, don't do it because that's what I did. It doesn't help. I burned it and it doesn't help.
Right.
And so I'm on the fence with it. Like I said.
So it's kind of a breakthrough moment for her.
It's a real breakthrough moment for her. And like I said, it bothers me sometimes that anytime, this is for your own good is a very loaded statement. And I feel like the doctor is really taking that upon himself as to what he thinks is best for Ace. And as much as that bugs me, he's not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's what makes him so compelling as a character, this doctor.
Yeah.
Because, you can almost see both sides of his reasoning with this. Because on the one hand, he's trying to help Ace overcome these issues, like you said, of guilt, of anger, rage, and just this childhood trauma that's affected her all these years of her life. But on the other hand,
and somebody's got to stop.
Right.
And somebody's got to stop light.
Right. Exactly. And that's
that
the other
has to happen also.
And that's the other side. So essentially, it's the doctor essentially trying to kill two birds with one stone with this adventure.
Right.
So I now want to propose a new set of episodes, Charles.
Okay.
Because with it, and I'm mostly tongue in cheek, but part of me serious. Xan mentions, the doctor's one step away from being the master, and in my mind, I immediately go, "Oh yeah, classic Who, but not the modern Who." And then I'm thinking, wait a minute.
Time Lord Victorious?
Exactly. And then I'm like, it would be interesting to pick 3 or 4 episodes with that premise of watching them going, how close is this modern era doctor to the master? And, almost remember when you went to a debate class in high school, they would make the argument, like, here are the episodes I used to build my case that the doctor is so much. That isn't what our show is, but I'm fascinated the idea of doing that by looking at modern eras. Well, the
good thing is we've talked most of them already, so.
Yeah.
Not that we couldn't talk to them again, but.
With that premise, you know what I'm saying, to look at it with that anchorage. I love that thought, Xan. I especially feel that with this doctor. But then as I think of modern doctors, there is that scene where you see Capaldi, you see Tennant, you see even Smith, they're making the tough decisions, and that sometimes it's almost a little callous. And we have talked about that plenty of times on episodes. Yeah, the fascinating point.
Yeah, and yeah, it's one of the reasons that I really loved McCoy's Doctor, because he originated this darker side to the Doctor. And, there was a little bit of it with Tom Baker and maybe a little bit of it with Patrick Troughton or Hartnell, perhaps. But it's McCoy, I think, that really embraces that cosmic manipulator, the guy that's spinning like 50 plates in the air to get a desired result.
Right.
And
I think
you brought up a great point that, he says even at this point, he's like, I play all these games and even I can't keep up with this right now.
Yeah, right. And I think McCoy does a good job of, I don't think we would believe this from the Doctor.
Yeah.
If we hadn't seen Colin Baker's hubristic Doctor.
Okay.
That, we need to see the hubris come out of the Doctor before we can see the puppet master Doctor that you have in Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good, in retrospect, I think it worked out. Good back to back. Yeah.
Okay.
And you would think Sylvester McCoy may have done that, right? Like Colin Baker he has talked about in interviews, he wanted to have a arc where the Doctor becomes similar to Capaldi, that was so grumpy and toward the end not as much, and he was cut short. But I think Sylvester McCoy, like, okay, this is now I'm umpteenth number playing this character. How do I do something unique? How do I do something different? And I think that dual kind of role, the smiley face, but the very kind of manipulate and behind, makes for a fun Doctor.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Sylvester McCoy, because this Doctor is such a contrast to McCoy's first season. When we're talking episodes like Paradise Towers or Dragonfire, like we talked about Ace's first episode, where it's a much more lighthearted physical comedy Doctor. And by this point, especially in McCoy wanted that darker brown jacket to essentially make his Doctor more serious. So I think he wanted to kind of go down this road with the Doctor. I think that he, for whatever his reasoning for this was, what he came up with was, this is the way I want to play this Doctor. This is the way I think he's going to be very interesting. And eventually, when they finally got around to see, there was a little bit of it in season 25 with like Remembrance of the Daleks or Silver Nemesis, but this season in particular is where you really get to see that come out. And it's really frustrating for me as a fan, because I would have loved to have seen another season of Sylvester McCoy's Seventh Doctor. I thought it was a missed opportunity. Again, like, with Colin Baker, maybe, having figured out some of his Doctor along the way, that it was just, he was robbed of the ability to kind of, just when he's starting to get his groove, to continue that a little bit so that we can all enjoy it. So
I agree completely.
Yeah. And Sophie Aldred does a really good job here. I find her very believable. Her frustration with the Doctor really comes through, and the fact that she's trying to confront a lot of these issues that, she comes off as very, like I said, very believable, very sympathetic in this. And
she does, and you get the feeling,
and you feel bad
with
for her
Ace
that she's getting manipulated by the Doctor.
Right, and you get the feeling with Ace that a lot of her anger comes from her trying to push her pain out of her mind, which is why she doesn't automatically recognize this house when she gets there. She's done everything she can in the last 5 years to forget this memory, to forget this place, to forget everything.
To block it out. Yeah.
To block it out. Right. And I think that's a lot of where her anger comes from, because when it starts to boil up, the memories, she has to swamp it down. And I think that's where a lot of her hot-headedness and her anger comes from.
Well, maybe it's the Doctor, this is his way of this pressure building up inside of Ace, that this adventure, for lack of a better word, is his way of releasing the release valve,
exactly.
To relieve that pressure, because and try to get her to calm down a little bit and start confronting these things that she's trying to avoid in her life.
Because it's not gonna be juvie next time.
No, and obviously
she's growing up. She has to handle it.
Yeah, and she's got to she's going to be out there confronting other things, so she's got to be able to be prepared for that mentally. Otherwise, she'll crumble. And maybe the Doctor doesn't want, like in the case where you just talked Resurrection of the Daleks not too long ago, where Tegan left entirely upset because she just couldn't handle the violence. So maybe the Doctor, I know, and so maybe the Doctor's trying to spare her some of that by toughening her up a little bit.
And the Doctor, and we, again, talking about the Doctor almost being the master, the Daleks are what almost broke the Doctor.
Yeah.
And he's been dealing with this for a while now. And so the concept that they're almost what pushed him over into that master era where he almost killed them all and had to stop himself. If they almost get the Doctor, I don't think Tegan had a lot of chance.
Yeah, not much of a chance. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with you. All right. Anything else about these characters we want to talk about?
I love when we go to Victorian England, we talk about how naked the women look, like in this one, and then in Tooth and Claw.
Right.
Where
that's another one. Yeah.
Yes.
Where Rose is in her overalls, and they're like, "What's with your naked savage child that you have?"
Yes.
Oh, this naked wee beastie. Yeah.
Yes.
It cracks me up. What cracked me up about this one, though, is that Ace had a sort of a scoop neck 80s shirt.
Yeah.
Which didn't show nearly as much bosom as a lot of Victorian clothing, but whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Well, she did go have those bare arms, so maybe gasp.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
But you could not see her ankle. She was right about that. She was wearing boots.
Yes. But to be fair, I love the way her response was like, "Oh, you want me to, to put on period clothing? Well, fine. I'll just put on this tuxedo."
Here you go.
Yes, I love that.
And you can almost expect her to just walk down the staircase, with two middle fingers way up going, F you.
Yes.
All right. Topic number 2, let's talk Josiah Smith, our big bad in this one of the big bads. Reverend Matthews, who has a slight problem with devolution in this episode.
And not in like a good Mark Mothersbaugh kind of a way.
No, not like in a cool Devo way. Oh no, it's Devo.
Yeah.
No, this is something completely different. And let's talk Redvers Fenn Cooper, who is essentially this insane guy kept up in a room, locked in a room, that Josiah wants to use to assassinate Queen Victoria. So, Zan, I'll start with you first on this one. What was your reaction to these characters? Any thoughts?
Josiah was interesting because Josiah is the pawn of the light.
Yeah. And
the light has this plan to collect every species, and he needs help with that. Yeah, he needs help with that. I thought that he was sort of a tragic one. Like all the people who were in this house,
right, under
the spell, I felt very sorry for. Like the constable where they take him out of the drawer and he's been missing for 2 years, and and even Smith, who they've driven insane. He's a big game hunter, and now he has to hunt the biggest game of them all, which is Queen Victoria, but he doesn't, he's looking for himself. Like he doesn't even know who he is at this point. They've driven him that crazy. So they're such tragic characters, but I like how and then the Reverend with his, I didn't know that I had completely forgotten about him getting the hairy hands.
Yeah.
And everything. I just thought it was so funny when he was talking about how, humans have been the top of the food chain ever since God made them in his own image. That's how it's always going to be. And then just eats the banana.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That was a great moment. And
well,
then,
you notice that Josiah was the one who handed him the banana. He's like, here, you want a banana?
Yeah, I want a banana. Heck yeah. And it's funny. And so him devolving felt to me a little bit like they felt like they had to explain the joke. I would have preferred it if we just had him.
Yeah.
And I think when you put all of these characters together, and I love Smith as the character as well because of the how he and Control are probably going to hook up later. I love that, how she's a lady, so he's going to take her to dinner. And I love his line, if she was really a lady, I wouldn't be in her boudoir. So I like his character as
you mean Red Furs. Yeah, Finn Cooper.
Red Furs, yes. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm saying the wrong name. I apologize.
Right.
Josiah Smith, Red Furs. Okay.
It's been a long day.
So Red Furs, you have no idea. So Red Furs, I like his character because he's that very typical Victorian explorer character where he's seen it all and been everywhere and done everything and hunted everything.
Yeah.
The big game hunter.
The Bwana.
So when you put these three together, and when you have Josiah as not as Josiah but as the pawn of the light with the collecting, and you have the Reverend as the head of the society, but still mired in very unscientific theories.
Yeah.
The three of these characters put together really tell you a lot about the British Empire and how they operate when it comes to their perception of what is important from the rest of the world. And this was something that I realized when I first went to the British Museum, that the British, at the time all of these things were brought back to the British Empire, this idea that preservation is so important, but not conservation. With big game hunters wanting to find all of these mysterious species and kill them and bring them back so they have them as a sample. Yeah. Or let's get these butterflies or beetles or cockroaches and kill them so we can have samples and collections. And that concept of we need to explore the world, we need to learn about everything, we need to be on the forefront of discovery, but Darwin and Conan Doyle are idiots, and we're regardless of the evidence, the scientific evidence we're seeing to the contrary, humans are on top. We've always been on top. We always will be. We were exactly like we were from the Garden of Eden. End of story. Stop bringing us your crazy theories, or we're going to kick you out of our society.
Yeah, essentially, it's this big sense of entitlement that this
right.
We're the British Empire. Everything is supposed to just be subjugated by us.
Right.
It's our destiny. It's who we are, and we can do with whatever resources or animals or whatever that's out there that we come across. We're going to claim it as our own and do with whatever we want because that's what we do.
And that's the thing.
It's arrogance, pure and simple.
It's major hubris and that's with the Reverend. Not only am I human, am I on top of the chain, I'm British, so I'm not even higher than that. So, and when you put all of those things together, like I said, for forever the British have understood the concept of preserving, but not conserving, not making sure that these ruins in Greece stay the way they are. No, we have to bring them back to Britain because we're the only ones that can appreciate it and understand it.
Yeah.
So when you have all of this, all of these elements of this concept of how the British Empire operated, especially under Queen Victoria with exploration and
discovery,
India, Australia, all of that.
Yeah.
When you have that concept sort of
colonization.
Right, colonization. when you have that concept illustrated by these three characters, and then you bring in light,
yeah,
you sort of realize the fatal flaw of this concept. So I like how they illustrated historically how we got to this point.
Yeah.
And how England got to this point, and the different aspects of it. You have the armchair, the armchair historian like the Reverend, and then you have the actual guy who's out there in the deepest, darkest Africa with, looking for Dr. Livingstone, and
yeah, and
then you have Josiah, who is the one who is cataloging and saving and hoarding and building the collection for the greater good of the British Empire. This was an interesting way through three different characters to tell three different aspects of a historical period that is a fascinating concept to me. Yeah. Like I said, the idea that it's worth saving, mm-hmm. but not worth conserving. It's worth pillaging rather than saving.
Right. It's essentially its evolution viewed through an imperialistic lens, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Jesse, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
So a lot to unpack there, and
see, we deep dive, don't we?
Yeah, I love it. So the first thing I've got to share is I had the same thought, and I can't remember now if it was what city, but I went to a museum of history, and it's filled with all this stuffed animals and scenes that are just like a night at museum, where you've got all these exhibits of different stuffed animals and models showing these different periods of time.
Right.
I originally was going to say that I felt like the story would have been better if this had been more of a spy thriller, and that the Doctor and Ace are involved trying to stop Queen Victoria's assassination, right? Like this is almost a James Bond version of Doctor Who. I now want to go back and watch this episode from your thoughts of the idea that, they think they're on top of the food chain and how that this alien gets them. The last thing I wanted to add is just I remember when I was 10 or 11 finding in a used bookstore Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan of the Apes, unabridged.
Yeah.
And I poured through that book and loved it as a kid. And then I went and found every Tarzan book I could find and loved them. There was a podcast called Literary Disco that Todd Goldberg, a mystery writer, and they just recently skewed Tarzan of the Apes because of the European and white superiority that is throughout the book.
Right.
And it crushed a childhood memory of mine, right? And so you hearing that story brings that back because it is true. There is this arrogance that not only is mankind top, but England is top. Not England women, England men. England men are the ultimate, we are the ruling class. It's what we have always been and we always shall be. And, God save the Queen and God save the King and long may the British Empire rule. And of course we now see that all things end. So really, really an interesting thought. And like I said, I can't wait to go back and watch the episode from that perspective, Xan and Charles. I appreciate that.
Well, that's why we're here, Jesse, because we discuss it and we hopefully give you a fresh look at what you've just watched, and hopefully you can go back and watch again through a different lens. Yeah, Josiah Smith is very interesting character, and obviously with the theme of, the Darwinism is very prominent, and obviously in the story, the survival of the fittest, and this whole idea that Josiah's plan to essentially, he views that England is not going to survive unless we take out Queen Victoria. So therefore, I'm coming up with this very convoluted scheme to do that. And so essentially, yeah, it's Josiah trying to follow the guidelines of that evolution. He's a believer in it. Which is why, he has those debates with Reverend Matthews, because you've got on the one hand, Reverend Matthews is coming from a very, very Christian, very, theology based ideology that, it's religion versus science here. And obviously Josiah's taking the science, the evolution, like, hey, things change. And I'm living proof, although because if you don't believe me, I've got 2 husks of myself in the deep, deep, deep basement in a stone spaceship to prove it. So he almost had he has this little game with Matthews. He invites Matthews over, and Matthews. I thought there's a great moment where Matthews confuses the doctor for Josiah Smith, and the doctor's like, oh, so you don't like this about me, you don't like this, you don't like my tie. And then the real Josiah Smith comes in, and Wainwright kind of has to, reevaluate, reassess. And I thought that was a great moment. Yeah, it's very interesting to see this character. I mean, I think maybe this story could have benefited from at least another episode. I don't know, to maybe clarify some things, because there's, his Josiah, he seems to have a very singular goal, but there's just all this other stuff going on at the same time that you kind of wonder, well, what's the point of it all? For me, anyway.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, this episode is a little bit frenetic. Like, where are we coming from? Who are these people? Who's in the basement?
Yeah.
You have
narratively, it's kind of all over the place. I agree.
It's weird. It's like there's a daytime staff and a nighttime staff, and the nighttime staff is all hypnotized by the light. Like, what's going on? So
yeah,
there's a lot to unpack.
The night staff is like packing heat, and the day staff is just like, oh, hey, it's going to get dark. Nobody sane wants to be around here where it's dark.
Yeah, let's peace out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, here's your breakfast. You're
See ya.
Bye. She leaves skid marks down the stairwell. All right. Anything else about these characters we want to cover? Okay. Topic number 3. Let's talk about Mrs. Pritchard, Gwendolyn, who's a pretty interesting character in this one, and Nimrod, our lovable Neanderthal butler. So, Jesse, I'll start with you first. What did you make of Mrs. Pritchard and Gwendolyn, and ultimately the revelation that they're mother and daughter? And any thoughts on Nimrod while you're at it?
Yeah, so I was very confused at first, because I'm going, okay, why is this person, looks like, Nathan, someone
Neanderthal,
from Neanderthal, and they are. Well, why is that not just?
Are we just going to leave that hanging?
Are we just going to leave that hanging? Like, what the heck is this? And there's all kinds of craziness.
It's Doctor Who. You roll with it. It's a caveman butler.
Exactly,
no big deal.
Right? Oh man, it's cool. And then all the craziness, and I'm always amused at the servants that don't go, look, I'm out of here. Like, there is some crazy crap happening in this house. I'm gone. They know, like, we just got to keep everything going and make sure that the formal dinner and everything. So I enjoyed watching them interact, but at this time I was still trying to piece together the story. Like, okay, who is this? Why do we have this? Why is there talking about this alien and things people locked up? So I'm going to just leave it here and let you two talk for a moment. And then if I think of something to add, I'll jump in.
Coward. No, just kidding.
No.
All right. Since Jesse's bailing on us, how about you? Any thoughts about Mrs. Pritchard, Gwendolyn, or Nimrod?
Jesse's not wrong about everything he's saying.
I know
there's a lot of confusing stuff going on in this episode. Like I said, there's almost like 2 different staffs for this house. Like, there's a staff in the daytime and a staff in the nighttime, and you wonder who's working for Mrs. Pritchard and who's Gwendolyn and how are they. And you find out through, as the story progresses, you start to wonder, oh, is Gwendolyn's father, is he the one who's collecting these bugs? Is he part of this collection thing? And then the collection thing starts unraveling, and it starts making sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, you have to kind of put that into quotes because it's kind of loosely used in this episode.
And I started to wonder at the beginning when I first saw it, especially Mrs. Pritchard, that once we find out that, is this a haunted house? I told you I hated haunted houses. Is she a ghost? Has she been haunting this place for 100 years? I don't know. You weren't sure who she was. And then when you realize that they have been sort of frozen and hypnotized to be more pawns of the light, and that's so tragic, and I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
And that's also why this house keeps operating the way it always has, because that's what the light wants. The light is so frustrated by the fact that things change. So he finds this collection within a collection. He has these people, and he has these collections of bugs and butterflies and beetles and cockroaches.
Right.
So it's all there, but he's got to freeze it so it doesn't do anything, so it doesn't change, so he doesn't have to collect more of it. Mm-hmm. So that's why they're like that. That's why they become pawns of him, ready to kill any outside source that's going to make something different, that's going to bring any evidence to the contrary in. And the scene where Ace finds the locket and shows it to Gwendolyn, and it's a locket of her and her mother, and it snaps her out of it, and she's just, oh my God, what's been happening? What have we done? Yeah. How is this way? Same thing with Mrs. Pritchard. She snaps out of it, but then kind of realizes there's no way out. And then you see
just when they get reunited, something bad happens to them. Yeah.
Something bad happens. And then you see the father and husband, who's essentially a head in a bell jar.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, this poor family. And like you said earlier, Charles, we see the light turning them into stone, very weeping angels, if you ask me.
Yeah.
That they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, these poor people. And I just feel so incredibly bad for them. And I wonder about Nimrod too. First of all, who named a poor guy Nimrod?
Somebody with a very bad sense of humor.
That was very sad. And I do agree with you. Creepy watching them turn to stone. I had not thought about the weeping angels, but absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where Stephen Moffat got the idea.
For Nimrod, like how long has Nimrod been with the light? Like, when did the light capture Nimrod and turn him into essentially his servant slave?
I got to think that he's just made. The light made Nimrod immortal, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, he picked him up from the prehistoric era when he was there the first time and said, okay, I'm just going to keep you around. I kind of like you. You're cool. And he's been serving them all these millions of years.
Millions of years. And
I think you have a better grasp of English by this point, but no, maybe not.
He's got a really good grasp of English considering that he's a Neanderthal, and what kind of accent and language centers does he actually have?
That's a good point. Yeah, maybe he doesn't have that fully developed Cro-Magnon brain, but
yeah, he's hunched over a little bit, but he's carrying those trays, no problem. So he was very tragic for me as well, where it's so sad that it took him this long to rebel against the light. I think that when he finally realized what was going on and how things that change is the essence of life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad that it took him
who knows how long
to do that. Yeah. So I found these three, I thought, were the most tragic of all of the characters in this.
Yeah. I agree with you that I think, well, for Nimrod, he worships light as a god. He calls him the burning one.
So that shows you that light is timeless. Obviously, light has been around since humanity and before.
Right.
So that's where he's...
And obviously Nimrod didn't know any better, so that's what he considered him, was just this godlike being. So who am I to go against God, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to be a servant.
You have a lot of things in this episode that are teaching you to question the status quo.
Yes.
Whether that is religion, whether that is the British Empire, whether that is an upstairs, downstairs cultural system, whatever it is.
The class system, essentially.
There are a lot of things in this episode that are telling you to
there's a lot going on in this story.
Quote. Yeah.
And a couple of I'm sure there's quotes all of us have, but there's a lot. The dialogue helps sell that message, right? The Doctor being this sort of a rebel and pushing against the boundaries and trying to shake things up, which is something the Doctor often does. I mean, we think Kirk throws down the prime directive, amateur compared to the Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Doctor has really no prime directive sometimes.
No, the Doctor makes his own directive, essentially.
He
especially
really
now that the Time Lords aren't around. Yeah, he's essentially has the ability to say, okay, I'm going to do what I want to do at this point. I want to get involved with whatever I want to get involved with, and you can't stop me.
I mean, he understands the butterfly effect, which is why he does things like let Mount Vesuvius
right.
erupt and tell no one.
Time can't be rewritten.
Time can't be rewritten. He is aware of that concept. So, but that's the thing. Time can't be rewritten, but the status quo can always be questioned, and that's how time moves forward. Otherwise, and that's what's so frustrating for the light, is that the light's never going to be done because different types of humans are going to come around. Different types of there's going to be, I'm sure the light's head would explode if somebody showed him a Labradoodle. He's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, how's this happen?
I have so many dogs. Who had to breed these dogs to make a new dog? Now I have another dog. I just
got done finishing cataloging all over again. You're killing me. Now
I got all the dogs, and then somebody breeds a Labrador with a poodle. I mean, come on.
All right, so obviously we need a sequel where Light comes back and has a hissy over dog breeders.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's a great point.
Genetically modified foods.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah. He's against the GMOs or whatever they called. Yeah.
Who made this hybrid of a peach and a pear?
Right. What is this?
Damn it!
And then
who got rid of the lime Skittles?
The turducken. What? This is crazy.
Who replaced lime Skittles with green apples?
And why aren't they fired yet?
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Oh, don't get me started on the lime Skittles.
I've been burning over that one myself, for a good 10 years at least now.
Oh my! The apple ones taste like soap. Okay.
Yeah, I just throw them out personally. I just pick them out and throw them away. I don't even waste my time.
You cry thinking about how delicious they used to be.
You are not even worthy to be a Skittle, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
All right.
And the lifesaver, the green lifesaver now is freaking watermelon. What is that?
Don't get me started.
Whatever.
If this was Ghostwood, we'd be ranting about this for like a good hour. Easy.
Well, true story.
This is us, the lights, saying, dang it, why do they keep making new things?
Right.
Linda will do that. We'll pour out the Skittles and then just pick out, and she doesn't like the yellow ones.
Lemon?
So there's this whole bowl of yellow Skittles, and Chris and I are like, what are you doing? Just eat them. Oh, no, I don't like those.
Well, see, what I would do when they had the lime, I would eat the lime with the lemon. So it's kind of like a Sprite kind of flavor, lemon lime.
Yeah, there you go. Put the lime in the coconut to make you feel better.
That was my move.
I like it. That's a good move.
I would do a lime and a cherry, so it'd be like a cherry limeade.
That's good. That's pretty good too. Yeah.
I'm now thirsty. I need to go to Sonic.
Give me some tots while you're there, okay?
You got it.
All right. So, Gwendolyn's this whole family is essentially like the Doctor Who version of the Addams Family almost. That with Nimrod, I guess, being Lurch. That Gwendolyn keeps talking about, well, like father's gone off to Java, and you very quickly realize that she's talking about death, essentially. He died. So that when she says, well, so-and-so needs to go to Java, she's like, you realize she's talking about killing somebody.
Exactly.
So I find her very interesting. And then, she tries to initially hook up and be friends with Ace, and then next thing you know, she's like jumping on her back at one point, trying to attack her.
See, I think they're fighting against Josiah and Light, but they're losing sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. So I see your point, though, that they are very tragic in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. All right, final topic. Xan already talked a little bit about Light, but I want to also talk about a little bit about Control, because in the third episode of the story, things just take a completely different turn. If you weren't sure about where the story was going, you really don't know by the third part, because all of a sudden it kind of turns into the Doctor Who version of My Fair Lady a little bit with Control. And who essentially, as we're literally a control used to keep, Light, imprisoned, whatever, and unable to return. So, to kind of keep him in check as a controlled experiment almost. So, Xan, I'll start with you. You talked a little bit about Light, but if you got anything else you want to talk about Light, or any thoughts on Control?
The only thing I wanted to say else about Light is, I've said most of it, that, he's, and I related to him a little bit because, and I wonder if you did too a little bit, Jesse, where, you're like, they just unearthed another bunch of demos from 1978. Now I got to buy that box set. Or, oh my God, they just released Elvis Costello's first record for the 8th time. I'm going to buy that record again. I mean, I can understand his pain a little bit as a collector. That you keep putting out different versions that I have to buy.
Or, say, Twin Peaks sets. That,
for real. How many times have I bought that?
Yeah, or me, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you can relate, Charles,
exactly.
With
how many Star Wars versions.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Thank you.
How many times have we bought Star Wars? Like, it's up to like 13 at this point. So I
want to be like Light and go, like, why do things keep changing? Why can't we just keep them the way they are?
Why does everything have to be George Lucas in the world?
Right. Why do we need a special edition? Why can't we just have the original?
Well,
why did you put this unreleased track?
Han shot first.
Why did you put this unreleased track on this best of, making me buy a best of full of 11 songs?
Exactly. That's right. You're totally right. Like, okay, I'm old enough that I bought it on an 8-track. And then, I'm going to increase my sound a little bit, so I'm going to buy it on an album.
Right.
Well, then I need it for a cassette for the car. And then, oh, wait, I need it CD because it's this new mastered sound, And then, gold
CDs.
Yeah, they're gold. And then, if you
MP3s.
If you buy the MP3 version of the album through iTunes,
you get bonus tracks.
You get bonus tracks or tracks released early, but of course I still have to have the physical, CD for my collection because and
Xan has an entire wall of CDs behind her.
Exactly right.
Full disclosure.
Yeah. So Linda chastised me when the latest Springsteen album was leaked about a week early. She goes, "Did you download that?" I'm like, I will neither confirm nor deny, but I had pre-ordered it on CD and had bought it on iTunes and had bought it. So I had bought, 3 versions of the CD, the album before. So yeah, that's exactly the point.
So what we've realized here is that we're all pretty sympathetic with Light on this one.
We are very sympathetic on that. Like what?
Or empathetic at least.
Quit changing. Why are these new species? Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, it's like I get it, but I'm not going to be. We will evolve with everything else. I will buy those damned deluxe versions of records that I've already bought 3 times. I'm not going to turn it to I'm not going to turn my favorite bands to stone, so they'll just stop. So I can have them all. But I remember being like you said, Jesse, as a kid, you're like, okay, I finally got them all. Oh, there's a new one. Oh man. Like, especially when you're a kid, you have no money. It's not like you have a job. Like, you just go.
And not to get on that tangent, but you're right. You will release a collection and there's only one new song. Like,
yeah.
And yes, I guess I could download it from iTunes, but I'm not a completist, right? It is so.
Oh. I wouldn't know anything about being a completist, being a comic book collector. Not at all.
Exactly. As we look at your background of this thing.
Yeah. It's like you need to have the extra photos from the liner notes or the whatever. You need all of that stuff. So it's like I get Light's frustration as a collector, but I don't get his, psychopath nature about it.
Well, yeah, he's like, and you understand his motives, but the way he goes about it, maybe you're not on board with. Yeah,
exactly. And again, like I said, with Light, he's very British Empire. He's very, I need to collect everything. And he's also almost predicting the downfall of the British Empire, where you can't collect everything. The world can't be completely yours.
So you're saying it's a metaphor. Ooh, yeah.
We
crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a metaphor?
And he sounds like a blue meanie. So I love that. I thought that was pretty funny. And then Control is a very interesting character because she, like you said, Charles, she comes out in the 3rd act, just comes up from the basement like, who the hell is this?
Right.
And then
she's all covered in like these dirty towels and rags and whatnot, and then slowly reveals herself over several scenes.
And then, wants to be a lady and be taken out to dinner by Redmond. Like I said, they're gonna be this wonderful couple that I want to see later on. How their romance worked out. And
Big Finish spinning off. Just saying. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So she comes in and just says, "Yeah, no, you can't do this. I want to be," and her wanting to be a lady from being hunched over in rags.
Yeah.
Is another metaphor for people need to grow, species need to grow, the world needs to grow. Yeah. You can't halt something just so you can be done. And
you want to develop, you want to evolve, essentially.
Right. You want to develop, you want to evolve, you want to grow into something
more.
I don't want something better, but something more. Yeah, something more. You want to learn more, you want to do more, you want to see more, you want to feel more.
Well, anybody who has a very healthy sense of self wants to develop themselves, wants to be more than what they are. At least I know I do.
Right. No person should ever stop learning. Maybe you
shouldn't be satisfied with what you are. You should always
never stop learning. And that's what Control tells us, that we should never, that what Light is asking us to do is to never stop. And it's interesting how we're talking about all of these things, and the the whole assassinate Queen Victoria plot of this is just a little bit of a blip in this episode.
Right.
See, and that's why I think it would be better served if there had been 2 different episodes dealing with the 2 different plot lines. But I do think you're going back, we need to involve and we need to change, brings us back to our very first topic. That's what the Doctor is helping Ace do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that's also helps with the story.
And even though we find out that history has told us that what Queen Victoria is trying to do, which is ensure that the sun will never set on the British Empire.
Right.
The concept of her wanting the world explored and new things discovered, that's what Light wants to stop that. Yeah. Light is like, no, not to make this political, but stop the count.
Yeah.
I have what I need. Let's be done with it.
So that's a good point. The Light is very much a stop the count kind of guy.
Right. And you can't do that.
I've got the outcome I want. So just leave it there.
Yeah. Life finds a way, and Even though Queen Victoria wants us to go to all the
I see what you did with that Jurassic Park reference, by the way.
Thank you. She wants to go to all the corners of the earth to essentially make her own collection.
Yep.
And, there's a part of Light. He's like, no, I don't want to find new things. I'm done. I'm finally done. And I don't want somebody else to have a better collection than me.
Yeah. Screw you guys.
There's a lot to unpack with the Light and his obsession. He's definitely a personification of obsession.
Yeah. The ultimate fanboy, if you will. All right. All right. Anything else about this story, guys? I know there's a lot to unpack here, obviously. We spent a lot of time on it.
I'm going to sign his collection with a rubber stamp.
All right. If only he was able to get Scotty instead of Welchie, I guess. As a Futurama reference for you guys. All right. Any quotes? Favorite quotes of this story? Anybody?
Yes, I had one.
All right, go for it.
And it's not showing up. There it is. We all have a universe of our own terrors to face.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's what the doctor is telling Ace about. She's like, I can't do it. I'm afraid. And he says, we all have a universe of our own terrors to face. And just reminding her that you do have to, young people do have to learn, and I learned this, that everything that you're feeling is new to you, but it's not new. It's not a new concept. Fear and being afraid and having a hard time facing things, what her biggest fear is her biggest fear, and there's no discounting that. But someone else's biggest fear might be the fact that the person that tried to murder them comes back.
Yes.
And that we all have, greater and greater fears, and we all have to face them, and we all have to deal with them, and we all have to learn how to live with our feelers, rational or irrational.
Yeah. That's very wise. Yes.
Yeah. And I am not the biggest fan of Dr. Phil, but I do agree with his statement, monsters live in the dark, and that's probably not unique to him, but he is the first I heard. And so by putting that flashlight on your fears and exposing it is the best way. I'm sure you have some great ones, Charles, and I'm going to probably steal one of yours.
Go for
when
it.
the doctor says, let me guess, my theories appall you, my heresies outrage you, I answer...
never answer letters.
Yeah, I never answer letters, and you don't like my tie.
Yeah. That was a good one.
I just loved that.
Yeah. That was just... Yeah, he was just ready to rip into Reverend Matthews there. I love that. That was good.
Yes.
All right. Any others you want to share?
Go for it.
All right. So I like the doctor talking to Ace, where he says, remind me what it was that you sensed when you entered this deserted house. An aura of intense evil? And Ace replies, don't you have things you hate? And the doctor replies to that, I can't stand burnt toast. I loathe bus stations, terrible places, full of lost luggage and lost souls.
Why is the doctor at a bus station?
The doctor's everywhere. It's probably like,
I love that quote,
it's probably a space bus station, to be honest.
Yes, but
that
still.
Is it like the restaurant at the end of the universe that he's talking about? Like that?
Kind of.
Yeah. Because I just remember I heard that line. I'm like,
the bus station at the end of the universe. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That's actually really funny. But why, when you have a TARDIS, are you ever taking the bus?
Well, if he just shows up, he just shows up there.
It just,
sometimes he shows up at airports, so why not bus stations, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Also, let's see, Gwendolyn with the doctor, where she says, I think Mr. Matthews is confused. And the doctor replies, never mind, I'll have him completely bewildered by the time I'm finished with him. So, thought that was good.
That was a great one.
And lastly, the Ace and the doctor. I love this exchange toward the end of the episode where Ace says, I felt it here in 100 years' time. The doctor says, an evil older than time itself. Ace says, so I burnt the house down. The doctor says, any regrets? Ace says, yes. The doctor says, yes. Ace says, I wish I'd blown it up instead. The doctor replies, wicked.
I loved that.
Which apparently
Wicked.
was, well, that's one of Ace's catchphrases, wicked.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that was suggested by Sylvester McCoy compared to the original script. So
I love it.
it's a much better line, I think. All right. If anybody doesn't have any others, what's everybody's ratings? Xan, I'll start with you. What's your rating for this one?
I'm going to give this one a 7.
Okay.
Because it does have its issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's very frenetic. You really have to pay attention, and you can only piece it together after you've seen the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like pouring. It's like when you do a puzzle. You got to pour out all the pieces, and then eventually you have to unpack all of it. So, but there are so many charming things about it. Like I said, we get some Ace backstory, which I love.
Yes.
We get like Jesse said, when the Doctor visits Victorian England, it's always gold. Yeah. And you get bug-headed guys in tuxedos. I mean, what more could you want from a Doctor Who episode?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very surreal and very up our alley, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and as much, being a John Pertwee fan,
mm-hmm.
I always appreciate the ingenuity that is required to keep the Doctor on Earth. When you write an episode where the Doctor's on Earth, you always have a lot you have to add to it to make it still be interesting. And we had an entire series of that practically with John Pertwee. Hey, you've had your TARDIS privileges revoked.
And it's only when they ran out of ideas that they decided, okay, I guess you can go back out into space now.
You've paid your penance. You've paid your penance, and you can go back into space. But whenever you have the Doctor on Earth, there's a real sense of you've got to dial it up a little bit to make it interesting, because Earth we've seen it before, so we have to have something interesting. So, like I said, J&T is not as good at it as we've seen before, but I think this one does a pretty good job of keeping us interested, even though it starts out it's not very linear, and it starts out very like, wait, am I walking into the middle of this episode? Like I said, you immediately get hooked with, I told you I didn't like haunted houses. Whoa, what's going on here? So as many issues as this one has, and as odd as it is, I still do enjoy it quite a bit. So I give it a 7.
All right. Jesse, how about you? What's your rating?
Well, I originally was going to go 7, but now I'm going to go 7.5, and I think I might rate it higher after I watch it again.
Okay.
But I'm going to give it 7 out of 10 choruses of "Burning Down the House."
Okay.
Watch out.
Jesse in the very Jesse's in a very talking heads mood. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
All right. Well, sorry, what was that, Xan?
I said you might get what you're after.
That's it.
My house. All right. So I'm with Jesse on this one. I give it. I enjoy this one a lot. I love the atmosphere. I love the look of this production. For, like I said, very late J&T era. This looks pretty good, and just Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred are just one of my favorite TARDIS teams, really. I love their partnership. I love their interaction with each other. So I'm giving this one 7.5 out of 10 yummy bowls of primordial soup.
Yeah, don't eat the soup, Charles. My God.
Good.
Yeah. And
if you don't know what primordial soup is, look it up, because this is also tied in with evolution, because that's where we all came from.
It's the essence of life, Charles.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I should have given a qualifier for mine. I'm going to say 7 out of 10 exotic cockroaches.
There you go.
Nice. Very good.
All right. So running along, no surprise there. So my reverse the polarity is going to be very quick. So I was thinking about, we could do Tooth and Claw. We could do, what was the other one you suggested? I'm trying to remember. Oh, The Unquiet Dead.
Unquiet Dead, yeah.
But I actually went with what Jesse suggested earlier, because I went with Hyde. So Jesse gets the win this episode for that. Yeah, this was the 9th episode of Series 7 in 2013, written by Neil Cross. And this one is on a dark and stormy night of November 1974. Professor Alec Palmer and his assistant Emma Grayling collect photographic evidence of a ghost in the spooky mansion known as Caliburn House. And Professor Palmer uses Emma's strong psychic powers to create a connection that appears to summon the ghost. They're surprised by the arrival of the 11th Doctor and Clara, who claim to be from military intelligence. The Doctor and Clara find a location in the mansion which is noticeably colder than the rest of the house, and they feel they're being watched. And that ultimately leads to Professor Palmer using this equipment that helps them take some pictures, and that there's something, Emma senses something that's crying out, and ultimately the Doctor realizes that it's actually a time traveler that's stuck in this pocket universe looking for help. Only problem is also that there's a creature in the pocket universe as well, and so they go to rescue her, and the Doctor ends up getting trapped there, has to deal with the creature. Clara goes to rescue him after fighting with the TARDIS a little bit, and they come back, rescue everybody, but then the Doctor realizes, well, hey, that creature was just trying to find its mate. There's another actual creature on the grounds that it's been trying to get to. So the Doctor goes back, gets the creature, and brings that back, and everybody's happy. The end. So it's almost like not really a ghost story, but it's also a love story. But it's a very creepy, atmospheric story, just like Ghostlight, as I'm sure Jesse can attest.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, so I definitely recommend checking that out. And hey, it's Matt Smith, so you can't go wrong, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
so listener feedback. We got a couple once again. We have one of our two regulars, Holly Mack and Dave Proctor, writing in. I'll read Holly's if you want to read Dave's, Jesse.
Perfect. I have Dave's up, so that sounds perfect.
Okay, so I'll read Holly's, writing in about Ghostlight. So Holly Mack writing in, Holly from Wisconsin, saying, "Hey, Charles, Jesse, and Xan." Hey, Holly. I have to say this is my second time watching this episode, and it still holds up. Love the Doctor's line about Ace being from another time, and that we get a nod to that new Who in the episode Tooth and Claw. Probably talking about the nakedness, I'm guessing. Don't blame Ace at all for wanting to dress up in a man's suit instead of a lady's dress of the time they were in. They looked mighty uncomfortable.
Corsets.
Yep.
Corsets.
Yep.
Yep.
I completely forgot about the hidden ship/tech room until Nimrod entered into it. The room that Ace and the inspector find with the husks of the bodies was quite the surprise on first watch. We also see a little bit of the manipulative side of the Doctor by bringing Ace back to Perryvale and the house that she set on fire because of the bad feelings it gave her. Yeah, because that was all that evil from, Josiah Smith and everything, and that essentially just permeated the house, so that by the time, in 1983 or whatever, that Ace couldn't stand it and burned the house down. Light was a rather interesting character. The costumes that were used in this episode looked fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Ace also might want to rethink her hairstyle just a bit. I can't remember how many times in the story she got her hair yanked to follow whoever had her. Usually it was like Mrs. Pritchard.
Yeah, that ponytail was not working for her this episode.
No,
it was really...
It wasn't. It looked good on her, but... Yeah,
it looked good, but she was really getting...
yanked around, literally.
Yeah, getting yanked around with that ponytail.
Yeah, the ending was interesting with the Doctor, someone apologizing to Ace, and I loved Ace's line at the end that her only regret was that she should have blown up the house instead of setting fire to it. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly, as
always.
always.
Love hearing from you.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, here we go. Hello, TARDIS crew. I hope you are all well. I like this story.
Hi, Dave.
I like this story. I haven't watched many Sylvester McCoy stories, but I always feel like his ability to act outshines the writing. This was a good ghost story, as it usually found out by the Doctor to be something else. I enjoyed Ace being accused of being a naked wild person.
A lot of people did, apparently.
It immediately reminded me of the David Tennant story, Tooth and Claw, which is assumed was the reverse the polarity.
Never assume, Dave.
Yes. I give this 7 of 10 missing bags of explosive. I expected Ace to blow something up somewhere. I love that line.
Where was her Nitro 9? I'm just saying.
Yeah. Have a wonderful week and stay well. Thank you, Dave Proctor. Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Great.
I do too, Dave, so thank you very much.
good guess on reverse the polarity, and you heard Charles said he considered that one.
Yeah, I did. I mean, obviously you had Queen Victoria, so I get that. You had the nakedness, so I get that. But I didn't really, the werewolf thing wasn't really jibing with this story. So
with the ghost story, absolutely.
Yeah, and it wasn't as atmospheric as, say, Hyde was.
So, Charles, I have a question.
Well, I have an answer.
If someone wants to be like David and Holly, how can they?
Well, you obviously want to be like David and Holly and all of our wonderful listeners out there that write in. So write to us here at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on Twitter, Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who Podcast, or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere Podcast. And Jesse, where can they find you and hear more of your illustrious work?
So I hope our audience is heading over to Disney Plus and have been enjoying the WandaVision journey. It has been a blast watching this every week and then joining Charles, Nick on our Phantom Zone podcast. So please, if you have not gone, if you're watching WandaVision, please go and listen to us on the Phantom Zone podcast. If you haven't watched WandaVision, please check it out. It is a really cool series, and Charles, Nick, and I have a blast talking about it. So please check that out. We also, this is Friendship Month on Set Listing Bruce. I have 8 episodes where I have had people who have bonded through various things, including Springsteen's music, that we got them together. An episode that's coming out tomorrow as we record this. 2 people that are active in fighting hunger in the United States met at conferences and go, oh, you like Bruce Springsteen? I like Bruce Springsteen, and ended up being friends over their mutual passion of fighting hunger and Bruce music. And I have a whole bunch of stories like that. So Set Listing Bruce, please check that out. And Xan, how about you? I think you do a podcast or two, don't you?
Yeah, I do a couple of them. If you want to hear me and Charles do more deep dives and have more tangents than even the doctor can keep up with, you can listen to us either on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast, where we discuss all things Twin Peaks, all things David Lynch, and all things tangentially related to Twin Peaks and David Lynch. Or if you want to hear us discuss our favorite movies while enjoying our favorite beverages, you can listen to us on Drunk Cinema, which is exactly as advertised. We get drunk and we watch movies and we discuss them. And if you want to hear me talk about Oscar-winning movies, like John Schlesinger as the director of Midnight Cowboy, things like that, you can listen to me, Oscars podcast.
Yep. Definitely check her out on Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, because Xan is fabulous on that. Obviously, I'm going to be biased and say she's fabulous on ours as well, but I'm sure Nick would
you're
definitely...
fabulous on ours, too.
I do all right. But you're the star. You're the star. We all know that.
So
I'm just the one that gets the drunkest.
That's what makes you the star. So
I do want to give you guys a little shout out. I had seen the G-rated David Lynch movie like all the time
story.
Back when we at Blockbuster, and I never bothered to do it. And so now then I've added it to my queue to watch because after hearing you guys talk about how you were surprised how good it was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should watch it. I think you would really like it, Jesse. It's very good. It's very good.
Good.
And it is very much a David Lynch movie, oddly enough.
Yeah. I am still craving a Braunschweiger sandwich, too. I got to go get one soon.
Yeah, or weenies by the campfire. Check that out.
Charles,
your dinner,
if I wanted to read more things about some of these topics, is there a magical place I can go?
Is there a blog that just talks about geeky stuff in general, Charles?
It's possible. As for me, you can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Facebook, or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, or my blog at Geeky Things. Wait for the thing.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here in Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and all kinds of other cool stuff. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media, including, the aforementioned The Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse and DJ Nick. where right now we're talking WandaVision, having a ball with that. We're going to be talking the final episode this coming Friday. Well, at least that comes out this coming Friday. So stay tuned this week for that. And then we're going to be talking the first 3 episodes of Superman and Lois, which has been outstanding and highly recommended by yours truly. And I'm sure maybe Jesse Jackson as well. It's been
absolutely.
We watched
totally
the second
agree.
episode last night, and it was all kinds of greatness. So I'm very happy with it. And then also, well, hey, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, like Xan said, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and whatever pop culture nonsense permeates our brains at any particular given moment in time. We're having a ball with that. And like Xan said, we just finished talking The Straight Story, which is the G-rated David Lynch film we were talking about with Jesse. And then coming up, we're going to be discussing next the pilot episode of On the Air that was directed by David Lynch.
David Lynch's foray into comedy sitcoms.
The very short-lived sitcom by Mark Frost and David Lynch, where a whole 3 episodes were aired by ABC and not in sequential order even.
Nope.
Just like 135, I believe, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
So we'll talk about that. So stay tuned for that because there's a lot of Twin Peaks actors in that one. And then, of course, Drunk Cinema, where Xan and I, we talk all things movies, have our adult beverages, adult conversation. Just got done watching Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which unfortunately had a little wrath on Xan after...
some stuff that Romulan ale.
Some stuff that Romulan ale. It's got a little bit of a powerful kick, that Romulan ale. So, yeah, got the better of her, but we'll be back here next week, or actually later this week, as we discuss for episode 007. We got to be talking a James Bond film, so we're talking Goldfinger, the man with the Midas touch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going to be talking that one. If you've ever seen this movie, you know why we're talking about it. If you haven't, I definitely recommend you do, and then check us out. Watch the movie right along with us, and enjoy our little conversation as we all watch Goldfinger together. It's definitely going to be worth it, and no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Operation Grand Slam.
Operation Grand Slam. So
words you surely overheard and could have no meaning to you. What do you say?
You can turn off the charm. I'm immune.
Don't get me started.
All right. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. Xan, thank you. We had a ball talking with you.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Hope you had a good time.
I always have a good time when I come to you guys' house.
I always love talking to you, Xan. Thank you so much. It's great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And Charles, thank you so much as always. I don't give you enough credit. You have to steer the bus and keep us on track and do a lot of the navigating, and I truly appreciate it, my brother.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So next time on Next Step Everywhere, episode 222, as we finally jump to the modern era to discuss the Impossible Planet / the Satan Pits from the David Tennant era, where joining us once again after a very long absence, Hannah Scarappa returning to Next Stop Everywhere once again. We love talking with Hannah. She's such an adorable young lady and for some reason mixed up with the likes of us. But it's going to be a lot of fun as we finally talk a 2-parter I've been wanting to talk for quite a while. I really like this one. And it's from Series 2, which we don't really discuss all that much for some odd reason. That's just the way it's worked out over the years. So
yeah, this will be fun.
This will be a lot of fun. So we got the 10th Doctor and Rose and a nice little black hole and some strange planet right in the middle of it for some weird reason instead of getting sucked in. How weird is that? Yeah, oh, gee, only a giant satanic-like being in the process. No big deal, right?
No big deal.
No big deal. So Hannah Scarappa returning once again, Next Stop Everywhere. I'm very happy about that. So guys, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Wear an effing mask, everyone. Please do not be like Governor Abbott in Texas. Wear an effing mask. Xan,
it's not
be
that
safe.
hard. Stop your crying.
It's not that hard. Charles, thank you guys. I appreciate this was a blast.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much again.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're always welcome here, and we hope to have you back soon. So, everybody, thanks again. Come on back. The Impossible Planet, Satan Pit with Hannah Scarappa, yours truly, Jesse Jackson. I don't have to say any more. And then we'll see you next time right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.